Welcome to the Enlighten Up podcast, where I am going to take you into a deep exploration of what it means to exist in this current reality. We are going to raise your vibes, open your mind, expand your heart, and dive deep into the wondrous mysteries and possibilities of this lifetime. There's been a spiritual catalyst that has set in motion the awakening process of many across the globe to return to the knowingness of self and unite what has been separated. Together, we're going to bring light into that darkness. We're going to remember the joy of living. But most of all, we're going to turn up the volume of our own eternal power and do the thing we're here to do. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Enlighten Up podcast. Once again, I am excited to bring a brand new guest to you today. Her name is Sherry, and she is a motivator and educator, and she derives the greatest joy from helping people develop their potential and to succeed in life. She and her husband are a rags to riches story, and they achieved it through the continual education and application of the things that she's learned. She's got a really incredible story to share with all of us today. And I know that what I love is this journey of life that so many of us are on, all of us are on, that oftentimes we wonder why we go through these struggles, or we have these certain kind of soul contracts that we're working through, but really they're to provide us with opportunities and growth that will ultimately take us to, I think, our greatest potential and one of our happiest places.
Yeah, I think so. I heard this thing the other day about how all of our growth comes from our adversities. I said, I hope that's not true, but it might be true, at least some of the major things. But even I read while I was writing Life Mastery, I read Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way, which was timely for me. You know, as I was writing the book, every time I bump up against something, I think, wow, the obstacle is the way. But really it is, you know, and if I had not had the early, I won't call it adversity because we were happy. It seems like a harsh word, but if we didn't have the problems, the poverty we had when we were earlier on in life, I wouldn't have learned all the things that I learned. I wouldn't have needed to do that. So it's true, right? It's our struggles that make us strong, and we learn so much from.
Yes. Yeah, no. One of the things that I've been talking about a lot on my channel, and I've got this new coaching program, is how important it is to learn to repurpose your pain and all of the struggles that you've gone through, all of the trauma that you've gone through. It's there to give you access and almost open a portal to something that you wouldn't otherwise be able to access if you didn't actually go through it. So much of I believe, for me, I have two greatest teachers. One is my body. I've learned so much from my body, but my other one is experience. To me, I'm very much an experiential learner. And when you go through something and you actually physically experience it, there's something that gets deeply embedded in your cells on not just what you're able to do, but your own confidence and belief in what you're able to do.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's there's a confidence that comes in, right, with making it through, and especially like if you make it through, not just make it through, but you actually thrive as you go through something. There's the confidence that you get from that. I had this experience. I've never shared this. I don't think I've done over 100 podcasts. I've never shared this, but I was 15 and I broke my arm. I was getting ready for rodeo queen contest, and I broke my arm, and it was broken pretty bad. They fixed it, but then it had to be operated on. So now I have to go in and have surgery. And I'm like, I'm not my parents. I'm not doing it. But they were the parents, and so I had to go do it. But I remember after the surgery, it was like 2 weeks in the hospital. It was a big deal. I was blown out of my hip this is 1971 probably. So, back in the dark ages. And my hip hurts, I'm limping, my arms in a cast up to my armpit. And I'm sitting on the porch and thinking, I feel strong, weirdly strong. Wonder why that is. I went through the surgery. I didn't know, nobody taught me. I didn't know anything, and I didn't know why that was. But I said, isn't this interesting? I'm kind of glad I went through that because I feel really strong. I didn't know why that was. Of course, now looking back, you have that experience over and over again. We feel a little stronger every time we go through something hard. But that was a new sensation for me, and no one to interpret it for me. It wasn't with more life experience that I realized that's what was happening there for me.
Okay, so you kind of recognize that going through such a challenging experience with even with your body, it does prepare you for greater things down the road.
Yeah, it's just, I know it's Nietzsche said it, and it gets said all the time, but that which doesn't kill me makes me stronger. And it
Yes.
really is kind of a true, it is kind of a true thing.
Yes. Yeah, it does. It does. So you have this rags to riches story. And, this is one of the, I think, big struggles with anyone who's going through spiritual development and growth, especially if that's one of their bigger passions and that's what they're drawn to, is because of the martyr complex that has been imprinted into our psyche, into our DNA, just as a healer, whether, even just from spirituality and the religious aspect. There's this idea that if you're going to be of service to the world, you got to give it away for free. And so learning how to come out of that poverty mindset is a really difficult hurdle for a lot of people to start actually using the gifts that they've been given, and instead of what they learned through institutions and schooling and all that, and actually put to use what they love to do, what there's passion behind, but maybe they don't have as much confidence in charging that kind of money because they don't have a big university degree behind it or some kind of certificate. How did you ever have that mindset, or was it not ever anything that you had to deal with? Because you were not in the same financial situation that you eventually got to, where you started, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, three thoughts on that. First of
Mhm.
all, we went into business and we're entrepreneurs. One of your measures of success is making money. That's just it. And the more money you make, the more people you can hire, the more good you can do. And so to charge people, obviously you can't stay in business very long and do those things. We've been able to support a lot of charitable causes and a lot of things we've been able to do, and the freedom to promote my book, and make sure my message gets out. So much freedom to do good for other people because we ran successful business. If we gave it away, we wouldn't be successful. And it doesn't matter whether it's a product or your time. If you give it away, not that you can't give away a lot, there's a lot you can do along the way as well. So that's one thought that I had. And again, about doing good. The other thing is, this is what I learned. I had a fitness business, a boutique fitness business for 9 years. And then I coached all through that time. It was a fitness business it was fitness and personal development. So we had Fit Mania and Fit Life. And so I was coaching then, and now I still coach, obviously. And this is what I learned both in my fitness business and my coaching business. If I don't charge, they don't do well. It's so
I
interesting to
know.
me.
I completely agree. It's what I noticed too. Because when I first started, there was a couple of people who tugged on my heartstrings. It's not like they were purposely trying to tug on my heartstrings, but their story and who they were was tugging on my heartstrings. And I offered some, free coaching to assist them in getting through. And what I realized is that as time went on, there was this very codependent relationship forming. And I realized that the person wasn't actually, they had improved somewhat, but then there was this plateau and it never went beyond that. And I could almost tell that, well, not almost, I could tell that the person was trying to tell me everything that I wanted to hear so that they could continue with the coaching, even though I knew that it wasn't what they were doing, or that it wasn't taking, like, whatever work that they said what they were doing, it wasn't, they weren't believing in it. I don't know how to explain it,
I can
but
explain it for you. What they
okay.
wanted was your attention. They enjoyed the attention. They didn't really want to do the work, but they really did want to do it. And they wanted to be a person that could say they're in coaching. They wanted your attention. But if you really are intent, if you're paying the money, you got to get something out of it. If you're just using your time. Well, I would say about those people, I think their intention's good. I don't think they meant to be this, but they just are enjoying your time.
It's not, yeah, it's not that anyone's trying to, screw me
No,
over or anything like, no,
no,
this
it
was,
was
and I know
just
this was not the intentions of some of these people, but what I do know is that there are certain trauma patterns that we live out, where we continue to play the victim and we don't even necessarily realize we're playing the victim. And so what was interesting is the more this person identified with their victim role, the more they thought they were going to get more coaching, because that's how it started. And it's an interesting phenomenon. And so I had to stop that altogether and seize all kind of charitable coaching because it just
not. I can work with somebody on the money, and I don't need their money at all. And I'll tell them that I don't need your money, but you need to pay me because you need it for that. But the thing that you're talking about, and it's really common with clients, anybody, just about anybody. Some people are a little farther down the road, but they do what I call loop, or they'll keep going back to their story. And if you want counseling, then I'm not for you. I'm trying to work with people that are higher level. So I will say, frankly, I'll say just with all the love in my heart, I will say, we've been through that story. But one of the problems with letting them repeat their story too is every time you repeat your story or your problem, it becomes more, you actually experience the emotion in your body too, the same emotion. And so you get the same sympathetic nervous system release. And it gets more, it actually changes your brain. Did you know that? It actually creates these kind of groups in your brain. And so your story, you just keep telling it over and over. And the more you tell your story, the more it becomes a part of your thinking. Your sympathetic system reacts every time. What we're trying to do in coaching is give up the story and move forward, right? So
yeah.
if I let them loop on the story, we're not going to get anywhere, and I won't do it. If you want to do that, counselors, that wasn't doing favors, but counselors will do that. But I'm not going to do counselors. I tell them we're not counseling. So what would you like to do about it? And that's how we move forward. What should we do now about it? I might give them a minute. Depends on what the topic is. But if we've already been there, I'll just say we've already been there. So what are we going to do about it? How's it going? What's going to be your next step now from here?
Well, and you said an important thing there that maybe not everyone fully grasps at the time when they're in their loop, and reinstating their narrative over and over and over again, is that you're literally changing your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And those neural pathways are growing deeper and they're hardening even more, which means it's going to be that much harder to overcome it.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's exactly what's happening. But it's interesting to me that if you say it over and over again, especially if you're retelling it over and over again like that in that way, it does that. But I've got a skill that I teach some of my clients when they're doing that. When you write it, like not like a journal, but like stream of consciousness writing it, you can actually let it go. I think you need the other person make that happen. But if you just sit down with yourself, so somebody's got this thing going on, I'll say handle it in your morning pages, and they'll just do, if it's 3 pages of just written stream of consciousness stuff, and they can let it go that way. If you have an audience, and I don't know why that is, but if you have an audience, what the difference is, but it's a difference. It's a totally opposite effect if they write it. Not write it for posterity, but write it not to ever be read again.
Well, the audience is there to give validation.
Yep.
Yeah, I've got a friend who, yeah, I've got a friend who does this, and I've been trying so hard to like get him to realize, like, stop reinstating the things that keep hurting you, like the body aches, whatever it is, how this person did you wrong, how that person did you wrong, like just give it up. Because every time you say it, you bring it more it crystallizes more into your reality over and over and over again.
I'll bet you're not making any progress. This is another thing I've learned. If somebody doesn't pay me for advice, they won't take it. They don't want it.
Yeah,
but
no, this is super
here's
true.
Here's the reality too about the pain thing. This is my story thing. This hurts, or I'm a person with a bad back, or whatever it is. That becomes that's the ego thing, and it becomes part of a person's identity. I identify with these things, how everybody did me wrong, or the things in my body that hurt, or I'm a person with diabetes, or I'm a person with bad knees, or whatever it is. the person identifies with that. And so even though they would never admit it, they can't even imagine that it's true, it becomes who their identity is. This is my identity. I'm a person with this. Or I'm a person who is treated like this. They don't want to give it up. So if people talk to me like that, I just try to nod and change the subject, find new friends.
And
I
also,
hate the conversation, but I know I can't make any difference if they don't ask. In fact, I'll tell my clients when they come in, you're going to learn a whole bunch of stuff and you're going to want to share it with everybody. I would advise you not to unless they ask you what you're doing, and then you can share. But if you just try, you think, oh, somebody needs to hear this, it's probably not going to go anywhere.
and I think too, from my own experience, and this is just from what I experience with myself, is that if I'm spending more money on something, I'm more likely to take it a lot more seriously.
Well, right. You know, you need to, I try to keep, because the people that I work with, I could charge a lot more. I had some people for a while that were, you know, kind of advising me, and they're like, you need to get to the corporate world. You could charge a whole lot more money. And I kept thinking, why don't I want to do that? It didn't sound very interesting to me. It's because who I like to work with are the people who were, I would like to work with the people who would be like me back when I was looking for somebody, but there was no coaching and there was not anything out there for people like me when I was young. I want to help these young entrepreneurs, these people who are trying to get their feet on the ground, who really are hungry. But those are not the people with a lot of money. I don't want the ego that I'd have to deal with in a big company. I want the guy who is starting his own. One thing with entrepreneurs too, as most of my clients are, they're not getting training. They're not in a company where they're getting training, right? As part of their business, their job. So they need it more. But I really like them. I like their drive. I like the helping them focus on one thing, you know, narrowing it down. And so I can't charge them like I could if I did in the corporate world. Again, I don't need their money. So I try to find a place where it pinches. I mean, I found that place, I think, for most people. It works for almost everybody. It pinches a little. It's a bit of a sacrifice, but it doesn't prevent them from being able to do it. You know what I mean? I don't want to be in the way of their dreams either. But the interesting thing about, I did this little kind of review of the clients I've had, everybody I could remember. And except for the couple of people that came in who already had plenty of money, everybody was on track, either was making more money by the end of their coaching with me, or they were on track for making a lot big money, right? So I should remind myself of that, and remind them of that. Everybody that comes to me ends up richer. Wait, they make more money than they pay me. I'm not charging you enough. But I try to keep it in that range, though. You know, where anybody, a stay-at-home mom, or a new entrepreneur, or a new dad, or whoever it is, a young married couple can afford it, but pinches.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, and it's touching on another thing that you just mentioned there. What I think a lot of people don't realize, and speaks to the level of confidence in your own personal value of what you're bringing to the table, is that when you think about who your clients are whoever you were at the, more towards the beginning of your journey. You know, like that's often what they say, because you become the perfect teacher for that because you've lived it. And so we're so programmed to need a certificate to, say that we're this or charge that or whatever it might be. So it is a program that needs to get to be overcome through that. But again, it's part of the journey in all of it.
Yeah. I'd like to address that just for a second. So if somebody's looking for a coach or a mentor, and I do what I call mentoring, and the main reason I do it is because a mentor is somebody who's already been there and can show you the way, right? So you talk about the certificates and weekend programs and seminars, and then you're a coach or whatever. If you're out there looking for that, I'm not impressed. If I'm going to go to somebody for advice financially, I'm not going to go to somebody who's broke, right? Or if I'm going to, in our house, we call it never go to a fat trainer. No, never hire a fat trainer. Because you don't want to go get physical fitness advice from somebody who's not physically fit. That's silly, right? But then we got all these people life coaching whose lives are a wreck. And I'm thinking, how does that work? Why would you take advice from somebody who's not got their own stuff together, right? So it doesn't, that's not the certificate you need to look at when you're looking for a coach. or a mentor, look for their lives. I think you should be able to ask them if they're financially solvent. If be able to look at their lives and say, yeah, they look fit. Yeah, they look like they've got their relationships together. Find somebody that you admire, that you want to be something like what they are, and then pick that person and get your coaching or your mentoring, which then makes them more of a mentor. One of the things about my book that I'm particularly proud of, Life Mastery, is that I didn't put anything in there that I didn't know for sure to be true by my own experience, by my own success, and also by what I taught to others and watch them be successful. I didn't go look something up in a book and think this is a good idea and put it in there. If I have not proved it, it's not in there. And I was very careful. There was one exception, and I said, this is an exception because I'm still new at this. I'd only been meditating for a few years, and I feel like I'm still a beginner. I still feel like a beginner. So I don't want to ever come off like an expert in meditation. I'm just telling you I do it. And that was kind of where I left that one. But unless I didn't teach it, I don't teach it, and I don't want to get up on the stage and teach something I haven't proved to be true, and I don't want to teach a person sitting in my office anything that I don't know to be true for a fact of myself, not because I read it in a book or I learned it in a course.
Yeah. Yeah. You want it to be already a part of who you are.
Yes.
So your story.
Yeah. And I'll just say, so I am my brand. The way I speak in public, the way I dress, my fitness level, my ability to express myself, the things I know, the things I'm reading, I'm selling me, right? And so every time I walk out in public, I am my own advertisement, my own brand.
Exactly. So your story, take us through the rags to riches. What happened? How did you turn your life around?
So, I'm 67 years old. So I should have been out there. Somebody say this sounds like it was really a long time ago. It was a long time ago, but it was the 70s. And it was just an era of, I always say it's a sex, drugs, and rock and roll era. And that's the best way to describe it. And I was from high school forward, I graduated early. I was in that world more or less. And so that means, I did go to college briefly, but it didn't work out well when you're doing sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Education doesn't get very far. And my husband was the same. So when we got married, and I'd had a child a year before I met him, he fell in love with her, and I think that's why we got married. But anyway, got married. So we wanted to be married, even though it was not the trendy thing in our crowd to do, because we had this child, and we both felt like we loved her so much, and we wanted just to quit drinking, quit the party life, and establish a life for her. And then I got pregnant again, actually, quite quickly after we got married. So we have this little family, but we have no training. We have no money. We were both, I'm doing daycare, and he was working a night job besides his day job, and we weren't making it. And that means not credit cards and anything like that. I mean, just pay the bills and eat. That was how bad it was, because we just didn't have any way to make any money. But I just knew, I felt like this as a child, and the feeling came back to me that I just felt like I wanted all the success of life. I wanted to have children and have a great body and a sexy body, and no matter how many children I had. And I wanted to have enough money to be financially free. And Ken was the same. I don't think we knew this when we married each other, but we were both thinking the same thing. We are superior to these circumstances. We just have to figure out how to do it. So I started first, and then Ken quickly behind me started reading books. We were listening to audio programs. It was cassette tapes in those days, cassette tape programs, and anything we get our hands on. And we scraped together money to go to a few seminars a couple of years later and started doing some seminars. And I just started applying everything. And one of the first things I started with is what I teach as a hard skill, which nobody taught me. I had to figure out myself, is how to track my habits and the daily habits that I needed. I had no disciplines. I knew that was a problem. So I started to develop disciplines. I used a tracking sheet, which are still have been available on every website I've ever had for free, still are. You can get them yourself, but they're like a chart or a calendar where you write down the habits that you want, and every day you check them off. And so I started with that, and some other principles that we applied, and we had some more children. We had 6 eventually.
Oh, wow.
And I know, right? And at 67, I can still rock a bikini. So I did do pretty good with that one. And we just started applying things. It was slow, but faster than you would have expected. I mean, it's not a sudden growth. spurt. You think in the social media world that people just have this blow up of success, and that doesn't really happen, especially not real success as a person. But we were making pretty good progress, and people began to notice that. And I was asked, not Ken as much, just because he was busier. I had more availability. Plus, I had some experience in speaking, so I was a debater in high school. How to teach what I was learning. So I started teaching a class here and speaking at a thing here there, and I started teaching some of the things that we were learning. This isn't years. This was like 6 months later. This was 5-10 years later. I was being asked, it's probably more like 10, asked to share some of the things that I knew. And I kept learning and growing. And we set a goal to be worth $1 million by the time Kim was 40. He was 41. So we hit that goal. And then of course went on from there. And anyway, everything was great. The other thing I wanted particularly, I did not really want to be married or have children actually. Then I had this baby and then everything changed. But if I thought, if I'm going to get married, I'm going to have the best marriage possible, because I did not think it looked like an attractive arrangement from what I saw growing up. So that was another thing, is we both felt like we're going to be married, we're going to have a good marriage, and we did. We just have the best, most romantic and close marriage too. So I feel like every area I actually exceeded my expectations of what I could achieve. Financially, physically,
let's pause for a second on the marriage part. There's a couple things I'd like to touch on here. Because when it comes to relationship, one of the challenges that anyone can face, especially when you go into more of a spiritual journey, is that there's going to be a part where you do retreat from many of your relationships. You're turning inward. And part of the reason why you're retreating is because you're changing and you're not sure if the relationships are exactly what you need for your life anymore going forward. And some of them may have to go, some of them may just need to be readjusted or transformed. But what I find often happens is that some people, not all people, but some people can get really accustomed to being alone, that when it comes to being in relationship, it's a struggle. And so what did you and your husband do that really helped solidify and strengthen your relationship on all fronts so that it was a successful marriage?
Well, we set right off with a couple of habits that we learned from reading, and we said, okay, we're going to do that and do that. But before I do that, I want to talk about going inward. A couple of things. If you're like, if somebody works with me, we work on all 8 areas of life, including relationships. And if we're just turning inward and just working on us, and we're not working on us in relation, we need other people. We cannot really be better, except that we rub up against other people. I mean, these relationships we have them so we can be better. Yes. We're not really improving if we're all just coming inside. That's not right. That is not how we should be. As we have our own journey and we learn and we grow, we should be a light that shines and people are drawn to us. We should have more relationships and better relationships. We should be taking what we learn into our relationships. So anybody who's turning too much inward, that there's something missing there. We need to think, are we just, is this another way to be selfish? Because I'm totally believe we work on us first. You put you first, you work on you first as a priority. You take care of yourself, and then you take care of everybody else. And I would teach that. But if it goes overboard and is starting to pull away from the other relationships, now there are some people in our world we should let go. We have some friends that maybe not let them go, but they'll fade away usually on their own. Or sometimes you just say, I just think I'm going to kind of let that one drift away. Now I'm going to go kind of have a confrontation, because some people are not good for us. And I've done that a few times over my life. But a marriage relationship, unless you're married to a bad person, as we get better, the other person, and we change our behaviors, the other person has no choice but to change in relationship and in reaction to how we change. So we respond with kindness. We get kindness back, right? It's a very simple that, but it's deeper than that. But that's part of it. One of the things I found in coaching is that, I don't know why this is like this, but if I'm coaching a woman, her husband will be like right there with her almost, right? Pretty soon he thinks he invented it, right? She maybe starts working out now. And then he starts working out too. And he thinks he's the guy that started it, which is fine. Everybody's happy about that. So men will often, almost always, pick up something and try to kind of keep up a little bit. I don't notice it the other way. A lot of times I see that women will be, their husbands are doing coaching and they're like, yeah, good for you. And they go about their way. But I think it comes around. If you're married to a good person, we don't need to throw them out because we're having some personal growth. Now, what do? We had a couple of things that we were taught early on. And one thing, we like each other a lot. We like being together. This wasn't much of a sacrifice, but marriage was the first thing I was asked to speak on. And I spoke, I can't even tell you. In fact, I didn't want to write the chapter on marriage in my book because I'm so tired of the topic. I've taught so much on it. But we made sure that we spend some time together every day. Just not about the kids, but just before we went to bed, go to bed together. We try to get up together whenever our schedules allow it. Spend time together every day. We always went out, no matter how poor we were. We always tell the story about this old motorcycle Ken found. I was pregnant with our fourth child, and we would go to Burger King where you could get extra fries. If you bought 2 burgers, you get an extra fry and drink or some kind of thing on this little motorcycle. And I ended up smelling like this, like exhaust. But we did whatever it was, we made sure that we had a date on the weekends, and then we got away from the kids once in a while. So those are some things we did. Pray together every night. We've always done that. And we also try, you can read about it in our book because there's a lot of it in the book that's in there. But we also learned early on to put the person was a priority to the things. Like I tell the story about Ken going through the house. He was raised to be very frugal. His family was super frugal. Mine was not. We turned the lights on when we wanted them on. We turned them off when we wanted them off, and that was all. Otherwise, we didn't care. You could leave it. He always turned the lights off. This was the thing he was raised with. So he'd kind of stomp around and turn off the lights, and I'd leave them all on. And we lived in a dark house. I wanted them on. And one day I noticed he wasn't doing that. He was still turning the lights off. He wasn't stomping around and acting kind of irritated about it. So I asked him about it. This was probably the second year of our marriage. And he said, I just realized that you're more important to me than whether the lights are on. And we've used that as a metaphor for the whole basis of our marriage. You are more important to me than me getting my own way. And so that's another key. And then, I mean, this sounds, I don't know how everybody will want to take this one, but honestly, a good sex life makes a ton of difference because there's something, everything melts away after you've made love with your spouse and you've been close, and everything doesn't feel so important. And I don't think that I knew when I was younger that you would still have sex in your 60s, but I just figured I found out it got better and better. So I'm the best sex life of my life.
Oh, good.
So this gets better and better if you stay hanging there.
That's good to know.
I kind of rambled off on that, but hopefully that kind of covered your question.
So I like that point that your husband made to you, that it's more important, you're more important to me than being right. And that can be a difficult contention point in a relationship if there's been sacrifice over and over and the resentment starts to build. It can get really difficult to get to that point. But again, if you're managing your expectations, your own needs, there's communication all the way through, then that starts to make it a lot easier to drop the ego when the back goes up a little bit, because it's bound to happen. We're all human. We're all going to have our moments, so that's beautiful. That's really
But
beautiful.
I'd say this, we all have our moments and we are human, and the ego's going to come in once in a while. But if I'm feeling a pin-up bunch of resentment, that is not my husband's fault. That is still me. What's going on inside of me is what I'm responsible for. Now, if you're married to somebody who takes advantage and it's repeatedly and it can't change, you can't say, this feels like this and they don't want to change. You may have to leave that relationship to be who you want to be. But I think we need to be real careful and not put the blame on the other person. I can't seem to overcome my resentment for feeling like I give more than half. Well, that's on me. What if I do give more than half? Then who cares? What if I give more than they give? See, I gotta balance that inside of me. If I can't get over it, I don't know.
Well, yeah, and the thing is that what I've experienced, at least in my own younger years, is that when I was giving more, it was because I wanted to be liked. It felt like my value was tied in how much I could do for someone. And so of course, eventually resentment does set in because you do have your needs that need to be met, but you're never really creating an opportunity for your needs to be met. You're not really communicating. You're always putting yourself last. And so there's this cycle that starts to get created, and the other person gets used to it too. So it's interesting, you know, how it all, but I agree with what you're saying, that any resentment that you're feeling, it is on you, you know.
Yeah. And I think I like what you said, you know, if you're doing it, if you're giving what you're giving because you want to be liked, or because you want reciprocated, or because you think then they'll be different, then you are going to have resentment.
Yeah.
If I give because I just love you and I want to do this and I don't expect anything, then there's no resentment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I said. The resentment is something going on inside of me. And I'm not saying I never had that, you know, but if I feel like Kim's cranky or something, it probably isn't him. It probably is me thinking about me. And I need to probably think about through. And even if he is, I can, if I'm in my zone, if I'm in the right place, he can be cranky, and it's okay. I'm not. You have a good time. I'll be here when you're over. You know. Or am I interpreting it? Because I'm not getting something that I want. And there's a lot of talk about young women about young and also young women about having our needs met, Obviously, we have some basic needs, all of us do, but it really, a relationship, our partner is somebody to walk through life with, not somebody to cater to every little need. And I see a lot of posts on social media from young women who are like, I just got to find somebody who meets my needs. Well, good luck with that, because if you're needing needs met, that's how way you're needing needs met. That's not going to be a good marriage. You have to go into it knowing that you can live with them or live without them, right? That you choose to live with them and walk side by side, not be somebody's princess.
Yeah, and there's a difference between your necessary needs and also just the needs you like to have. You know.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, we all need to be safe. We have to be safe in our home. That's essentially, we have to be safe. And I don't think very many women or men, we don't want to be in a relationship if we don't feel loved. You know, so we need to feel loved, but sometimes that can be on us too. A person can be knocking themselves out, showing how they love you, us, but we want to be loved a different way, and so we don't see it. So even that can be on us, but we do need to feel safe in the relationship. That is one thing that's absolutely critical. I need to be able to have, is to be safe. And men too. Women can have nasty mouths and be very highly critical and demeaning and demanding of men, and we don't recognize that, I think, often enough. They can be just as mean-spirited in the relationship as a man can be.
Yeah. You know, before we got into the marriage part too, you also talked about there were some disciplines that you taught yourself, that you realized were going to be necessary. This is another major thing. I've talked about this a couple of times on my channel, on my YouTube channel, this podcast, and there is, whenever you're kind of working with spiritual development, growth, or any kind of intuitive gifts, healing, energy work, anything like that, a lot of people, they gravitate towards it. It's a very natural inclination for them. They're born with this. They know that there's something there. But what I've seen is that there is a breakdown in the practical day-to-day activities and behaviors that are needed to reach the goals and the dreams that you have in that spiritual growth and development. And a lot of people what I've heard often is, well, I'd rather just be living more 5D, like the 3D lifestyle is just not for me, or the 3D activities are just not for me. Like, it's just not who I am. And I call BS on it all the time, because you absolutely have to have a balance of the mystical and the practical. So learning to discipline yourself, especially if you're not used to being disciplined, is going to be essential and absolutely necessary in order for you to be successful at what you want to do. What was one of the key disciplines that really shifted things for you?
The habit thing, daily habit thing, is totally my jam. I mean, this is the first work we do almost from the beginning when I work with somebody, because it is about who we are becoming. It's what we do every day. It's who we're becoming. The goals that we're going to meet are the ones that we're working on every day. who we are working on requires daily disciplines. And so when I first started, I'm telling you, remember, I had no disciplines whatsoever. I had picked three things. I had picked daily prayer, daily reading, and then journal writing, and then quite quickly added working out to those. So, and then later I put planning my day. So I had those 5 things that I did. I had all these little kids, right? I mean, I'm like really busy. So those 5 things happened. I want to do spiritual reading. I want to do some more secular reading. I wanted to work out, pray, write in a journal. That was my thing. And I tracked those. I mean, I check them off my list every day. For a while, I would forward them in my
Okay,
planner. But
pause there, because how does it make you feel when you start checking them all off? Like, what happens within you that you realize?
well, you know that dopamine release that you get when you check your social media and you get a like, it's better than that.
Yes, I know.
There's a
It's so,
dopamine
I
release.
totally agree. You really
Yeah, there
start to feel
definitely
proud
is.
of yourself.
And it's not just at that. You got the dopamine release and there's some satisfaction that you're never going to get that on social media, right?
Yes.
I feel prouder of me. And when I can string, right now, Nicole, I'm tracking 14 daily habits. And there's some whoppers on there. Some of them are pretty easy. So I do, because I've been doing this a long time. I would not, to your listening audience, don't jump in with 14, okay? But I've got 14 things that I'm tracking every day. And I'm going for April for 100%. A lot of times, like we travel a lot. So when we're traveling, I'll say, okay, these are a couple of things I'm not going to do while I travel. I still do everything, but maybe this one, because it requires too much stuff or whatever. But I'm going on a trip next, leaving Saturday, and I'm doing all 14 of my things every day. In April, I'm getting 100%. And that's what I'm always going for, 100% is daily habits. But as the more you do that, I can do 14 because I started off with 3 and then I added 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 over 40 years. I can do 14 things. Self-discipline now is anybody who met me now would be like, oh, you were so disciplined. I am. But it's through the practice. But the things you do every day is who you're becoming. And everybody, you talk about the spiritual, everybody needs something for their brain, something for their body, and something for their spirit every day. So the first 3 habits, I started with those things. I would advise my clients to pick something spiritual, something physical, and something mental to start with. And they choose, I say you choose. You can floss your teeth if that's what you want to do. Whatever it is, we picked 3 things to start with, but eventually I'll guide them to make sure they've got at least those 3 things. And every day. Some people will say, well, I do it most days. Most days won't cut it. Most days means you're going to quit eventually. Every day. It's important one day, it's important every day. And the things that are really important, most important, are the things you can't do tomorrow. Like you can do the laundry tomorrow or today, but you can't work out tomorrow because tomorrow has tomorrow's workout.
Well,
you can't pray tomorrow's prayer, today's prayer tomorrow, because today's prayer needs today's prayer. Yeah. But laundry can be done tomorrow. Phone calls can be done tomorrow. Almost everything else can be done, but those daily things, you can't replace that. If I miss my spiritual, my mental, my physical, I missed it. And
so these are your top priorities. Like
this has got to be my top priority.
Do. Mm-hmm.
And I learned when I had all those kids, and I was very busy too. I was busy socially, church, different things, and I learned that if I took care of my things that I had done for myself, my daily habits, at the end of the day, I felt okay that day, even if nothing, as long as the kids were all alive, even if nothing else got done. But I could knock myself out cleaning the house and doing other things and not feel as good if I missed those things. And I never got less done. I mean, more done. I never got more done on the days I missed. I mean, I said, well, I'm going to skip today's workout so I can do more housework or I can do these other things. I didn't get more done. Mm-hmm. I got no more done when I skipped those things than when I did them.
Now, did you also implement that concept of let me do the hardest thing first?
I did that on my to-do list. My daily, this is how I teach people. You have your morning time, which is your personal development time. Those things I've got a routine for. I just do it. I meditate very first always, so I'm not distracted by the other things of the day. And I pray first, I meditate, and then I read. And so I've got these things I do. Those things I do in order that's a routine. Then on my daily to-do list, I do the most important things first. Eat that frog. I don't know if you read Brian Tracy's Eat That Frog, but we eat this comes from Mark Twain's little thing about if you've got to eat a frog, eat it first thing in the morning.
Yes.
I do this one first. So I identify the things that most resistant or the things that most need to be done to meet my goals. So
Mhm.
1, 2, 3. And this, I teach this too. I teach this in workshops for corporations. I do this a little bit, small businesses, smaller business companies. I do workshops, and I teach the employees how to rate their day. You pick these things, you plan your day, and then at the evening is your relationship time, and you spend it with your family, your friends, your spouse, and it's less structured, but very structured morning. You plan your day, be prepared for plan B, plan C, because some days now you're dealing with other people, you don't have control always. And then in the evening is your relationship time. And
Mhm.
that's a well organized life. So yes, I do though. I do make sure that I do those hardest things first, or if I can get rid of something in like 10, 20 seconds, a quick text or something, I may do that first just to get it
Yeah.
off my plate.
Because I find that if you leave the one that's more difficult towards the end, you're dreading, there's a sense of, I don't want to say dread. Dread might not make be too heavy of a word.
Resistance. I
But
call it
there's
resistance.
resistance, and
Yeah.
it's pulling your
It
energy.
grows.
Yeah, and it pulls more of your energy out of what you were going to need for the rest of your day. And so just from an energy consumption perspective, if you want to be feeling that at your best throughout the day, absolutely get it over with so that that thing doesn't continue to pull more energy than it needs to, that you could be applying to other things. And it
Oh,
also will take away some of your joy later on in your day too.
oh yeah,
So
yeah. It sits there on your. But I'd ask you your question, Nicole. How do you feel when you check that thing off your to-do list?
I feel like a rock star.
The day feels so much better, So
I always create these little lists, and I'm like, okay. And I will try to create it so that the biggest one is at the top. And this is one of the reasons why I love starting my day at I try to start around 5 a.m., get up and one of the first things I'll usually do is go to the gym, and I get my workouts out of the way for the most part. Sometimes I'll run, which I like to do later on in the day. There's just something I like about a later day run.
yeah,
But
sunshine.
yeah, the sunshine and just, there's something about it. So I I acknowledge that there is, well, one, I start to respect myself more, which I think is really important to note. The more you respect yourself, the more you show up, your energy just shows up in a different way, and people are going to notice it. It's not like they're going to know, oh, she respects herself more, but there's just a presence that you carry with yourself when you start to actually follow through on the things that you promised for yourself. And that's important, because if you start to keep your promises over and over, one of the things that you'll start to create is a very trusting relationship with yourself and how you run your business, if this is like business related. And I think that there's a sense of, you depend on yourself, you'll lean more on yourself, that you've got it. Like, it just creates a lot of confidence boosting and
Mhm.
things like that.
Yeah, you think that one thing, and I have that fitness business, and I learned real quickly, if I didn't know it before, that it's hard to advance very far in any other area until you get the body under control. So I think that's one reason it takes the most amount of discipline. I think until it becomes such an ingrained habit, at least to do the workout. So that's one reason. Taking care of yourself to show that you value yourself. I think that's a reason. And what you said made me think about. There's a lot of talk about boundaries, and I've had a few people, younger women, like, I just think I need to set more boundaries. And then I respond like this, because I say, do you think that, I asked them about, I said, you've known me now for a while. You've only known me for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you think I need to set boundaries? And they're like, I don't really see you doing that. No, it doesn't even occur to me to set boundaries. I think my self-respect creates the respect that I need, that nobody's going to cross and do anything with me that would be uh, untoward in any way, because my
Yeah.
personality is such that my own self-love of myself and belief in myself is such that no one's going to mess with me. They're just not. I
Well,
don't even Didn't even cross my mind.
Sherry, like, even like the energy that I was getting you right from like the jump was, yeah, you don't want to mess with this woman, like, don't try to.
It's not that I'm going to be unkind or mean or anything.
No,
Well,
but like, you're not going to take the shit.
it's just not my style. It
Yeah.
just wouldn't. I don't think anybody would even try. And that's been like that. I hear a lot of people say I'm intimidating. I don't. I'm not intimidating. Again, I'm only 5'4", I'm a grandmother, and I don't feel like I should be intimidating. But I think that's what they're talking about. They're not really intimidated by me, I hope. I think it's more, I radiate the sense of myself, because I've been working out every day for 40 years. I've been doing these things for 40 years. And so we'll think about what 40 years of doing these habits that, like you say, you work out every day. Now, multiply that out for 40 years, Nicole, and see how that, what would that do for your personality, your sense of yourself?
Well, equate it to an investment of money. If you were
Right?
consistently
Exactly.
putting money into an account and it was accruing interest,
Compounded interest.
compounded
It's
interest,
compound interest, yes. And
yes.
that's
And
what it
then
is.
that's basically what you're doing energetically.
Yep, absolutely. It's exactly the same thing. In fact, I often assign my clients to read Darren Hardy's The Compound Effect, because he talks about that very thing. These habits compound. So one of the things about, I'm not asked a lot in the podcast about the thing to happiness, and because I talk about that in the Life Mastery book, but happiness comes from every little step forward, and we only have little steps. But the cool thing is the little steps forward do compound. So it feels like it will take me forever to get from here to there if I just take little steps. But because things compound, it doesn't take so long, but you only get little steps. And there's happiness in every little step, even the ones that are compounding along. So yeah, it's compound interest, whether it's all the same, it's like a universal principle, whether it's money or whether it's your habits, the way you
Yeah,
treat people, it all compounds.
I know. And there is a payoff emotionally and energetically when you do complete that stuff each time, and you stay up on it. So I think it's super important. I think it's undervalued a lot by people who struggle to have their discipline, or maybe they don't realize how important of a step it is. Because it's our habits, just like
Neural pathways,
yes, the
neuropathy.
neuropathy. Oh my gosh. I don't, my mouth is not operating properly today. But yeah, like when you're thinking about those neurological pathways, that's what I was trying to say. Those neurological pathways, they with our see, now you've created very much subconscious patterns. You've created very healthy subconscious patterns through the habit tracking, right? And the behavior tracking and goal tracking, whatever anyone wants to do that's going to, make sure that they get done what they need to get done, and accomplish what they want to accomplish, that you're really, you're recreating yourself in many ways.
We talked earlier about the person who tells, everybody treats me poorly, or I've got this on the person, this story, but person with the story. This is like the opposite of the story. You're the person, I'm the person that works out. I'm the person, we're not saying that to ourselves so much, but what you're saying is it's internally, we are this person and we're identifying with these things,
Yeah.
these person habits, but we're actually doing something that's creating a different person, the way you put it. We are becoming something more, which is really the main gem here, right, is to work on us. We're like our own masterpiece, and we're being. And the other thing is, it's cool, I think, Nicole, and I think that's why you do what you do, I suspect, is because the more we work on us, the more effective we are in helping the world be a better place.
Mm-hmm.
Really, all we can ever do to improve a relationship, to improve the world, to improve anything. We have our local high school, they're having a walkout today because they want legislation on gun violence. Well, that's not going to help. I mean, I bless their little hearts, I see the thing, but it's not going to help, because how do you change the world? You change you, and when you change you can look around and say, who's the person sitting next to me might need a hug. I can lift the people around me. I can do something important to make the world a better place,
Mm-hmm.
if I work on me. And just
Well,
demanding the world to change or the people to change is not going to make you happy.
no, it's not. It's definitely not. Because you can't have your own happiness dependent on outside influences. But this is another reason why it's so important to be in touch with your future self. If you were to time travel and visit your future self and say, okay, your future self is living the dream, doing all the things that you see yourself doing, ask your future self, what did it take to get there? Because I promise you that in order for that future self to exist in all of that joy and happiness and dream fulfillment, requires you to change certain habits that you're doing today, which means, just as we talked about with the neurological pathway formation, is you literally have to start changing yourself. if you want your life to be different, you have to change to match that difference. So yeah, it's like they say that quote, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and thinking you're going to get a different result, right? And so many people don't realize that, oh, I might have to show up differently and be differently every single day going forward, which eventually is going to evolve to even more things that you're going to pick up along the way if you want that dream fulfillment that you don't have right now.
Absolutely. That's why it's all about your daily habits. What you do. In fact, if I get to speak somewhere and I get to pick the topic, I'll talk about why your systems are more important than your goals. Because as you plug your system in, let's say I have this vision of what I want to, my 5-year vision might be, this person down the road, and they look like this. Well, that's not going to magically happen, obviously. So I'm going to start going to the gym this much. I'm going to eat like this, and I'm going to put this on my tracking sheet. I'm going to make a habit. Now I can forget about it because I'm checking it off every day. It's happening. I'm doing that thing. That daily habit will get me there. I know if I do this and this and this, I will get there. You know that. You know what to do to get there, right? I know if I do it every day, it'll get there. So now I'm doing it every day. It's a habit, and I'm going to get there, and I can move on to another thing. So what you do every day, having a good system to track your habits, to make sure the habits happen, is essential. But one thing I'd like to, because I don't know who's listening, audience is exactly, but if you're somebody listening and you're like feeling overwhelmed by this daily habit thing, I would really suggest 2 things. Just start with one thing, even 1 or 2. You will find that happiness comes with every step forward. So if you're depressed, if you're anxious, if you're feeling like you're not going anywhere, you're stuck, start with 1 or 2 or 3 daily habits, and you'll be amazed. 1, 2, 3 days into it, you'll feel happier. Because happiness comes, we don't have to wait to get to that future self. Happiness comes, I know it's a trite saying, happiness is in the journey, but really it is. It's in the step forward because there is no end game. We are infinite in our ability. So if we wait till we arrive to our infinite place, there will be eons. we'll some other existence before we ever get there. We have so much potential in this life. We can't even begin to reach it. If I said this life I live right now, I had a pretty good vision of what life would be, but this person I am, and the way I live, so far exceeds anything I could have imagined. It exceeds. I have no idea. I remember thinking if I could live in that kind of house over there, that would be something. I'm in it may sound echoey here because I just bought this house. I'm in this house. It's gorgeous. This beautiful house. It's not huge, but it's just beautiful. I never would have in my wildest dreams thought I would live in a house like this. And here I am. So it's like that and everything.
No, and I think that's a big thing to recognize is that of course, if you start changing from doing these daily habits, what you believe you're capable of is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Totally.
And so whatever you think your dreams are today, is surely going to evolve and grow and expand as you complete these like daily disciplines. I like to call them divine disciplines, just because it's part of your divinity is to show up for yourself, like this is like your vow to who you are and your soul contract, your destiny. It's so important. And, if you are doing that, you've got to recognize that wherever you think you're going today, I promise you your future self has even bigger dreams ahead of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can't even, we're so used to having everything beginning and ends and thinking kind of small reading. We can't even conceive of what kind of potential that we have or what we could do. But like you said, I like what you said, that the more we do, the more we see we are capable of doing. I'm trying to remember quite how it's put, but there's somewhere in the New Testament, I think it is, it said, I said you are gods. I think he's speaking to people. I said you are gods. We really have this godlike potential. Eventually, for all work we're living, we're all working far below our potential. But eventually, to be, we have that inside of us. I mean, when I was doing one of the things that got me into meditation is I was having some chronic pain that was inexplicable. It had to do with my business, and the long run was my brain creating something to get my attention from something that was going on inside of me. But when I just was able to, with meditation, I still handle pain through meditation if I get any, which is hardly ever anymore. But I've thought so many times, if I can get rid of pain by meditation, by using my mind, what could I create? If I could take that same power and amplify it and use it for creation, what could I create?
Mm.
But that's something worth thinking about, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I can't do anything until I manage myself, my body, my mind, my spirit. I need to get these things working together and manage them and you do that through the daily habits.
And I think, you know, as we close out here, that's one of the biggest takeaways from this entire show today is for anyone is out there who's been struggling to, you know, maybe realize their dreams or really be in touch with what's making them happy and have that permeate through all facets of their life. It's like, what are the things that you need to start doing today that you haven't been doing that allows you to become the person who does, you know, have that happiness permeating through all aspects of your life, because it's all about who you are, you know, how you're showing up. And I think at the end of the day, if you want your circumstances to change, you have to be the one who changes. You know, and a lot of times people think, well, maybe I'll just change my environment, you know, like, which there is some there's some validity to that, because obviously we see it, you know, if you put a tree in, you know, some really unfertile soil, not a lot of sunshine, not a lot of rain, it's not gonna do well. But if you put it in a very fertile place that's getting a lot of support and getting a lot of nourishment, yeah, it's gonna thrive. But you've also got to figure out, what are you doing in your own environment, or how does your own environment shut that all down?
Jim Rohn said, "You're not a tree."
Yeah.
That means that we should, things that are toxic. We are sometimes toxic people. It took me so many decades to recognize how to handle a toxic parent. And I wish that those years back, you know, in that one regards, I could do that so much differently. But we feel like we have these people, we just have to have them there. Well, you don't. You don't. There's not anybody really that you have to have. You can choose them and maybe find ways to manage it. But what I'd like to say, I guess mostly that is, mostly we change our environment by changing us.
Mm-hmm.
Then our environment changes. But there
Yes.
are times when we need to disassociate from somebody who's berating us, pulling us down, making us feel less. Not like, oh, they're not always nice to me. Sometimes I hear these comments about how somebody's mean to them or they're being emotionally abused. I'm like, that's just conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
people are really working hard. Like I had a client whose father told her repeatedly that she was all growing up, that she was ugly, fat, and dumb. Well, that's a person you should try to get rid of, right? If you could. But otherwise, you can change your environment by changing you, and the
Yeah.
environment will naturally change around you.
Yeah, there's
The
more that you
people,
can do to change, you know, your environment, what you're doing, than what is like absolutely around you.
if
And
you can make a better environment, go do it. Just remember that wherever you go, there you are.
yeah,
You have to
exactly.
change you.
Exactly. Exactly. So this has been wonderful, Sherry. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
And
And
good conversation. I'm glad we made it.
yes, I know, I know. We've had a little bit of a scheduling issue here, but let my audience know where they can find your book, and also just tell them again what the title of the book, and if they need to reach out to you, where can they find you?
You can, I answer every email myself. So you can email me. That's the best way if you want to have any real conversation. At Sherry, SHERRY, at lifemasteryinfo.com. You can also get the tracking sheets for free on lifemasteryinfo.com. We send out a lot of those. You know, you just get them, you know, you can just print them out. And they're free, totally free. And you can get them as often as you want. I have people just get them from me regularly. Every year I see their name pop up. So you can get those for free also on the website. The book is Life Mastery, Personal Progression Towards an Infinite Potential by me, Sherry Sterling Fernandez. And that is on Amazon. It's also it's hardback, paperback, Kindle, and there's also the Audible, which I read myself.
Oh, fun.
It took me 2 tries, but I got that done. So it's also on Audible, and so the book is very available and did win was a Wall Street Journal bestseller in 2021 and USA Today and a couple other awards that we've gotten on that book. So anyway,
Perfect.
that's where you can
Wonderful.
find me.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'll leave all of that information in the show notes below for everyone who are watching on YouTube. It'll be in the description. If you're listening on the podcast, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else, it'll be in the show notes. Don't underestimate the power of your daily habits and what you're doing, the behaviors, all of that can be adjusted. And think about what it is that you need to change. And I would suggest every night planning your day before you wake up the next day so that you already have it in place, because if you're already creating it, you're already manifesting it. Okay, so I love you guys. Have an incredible day, and I'll be back with you next week. Thanks again for joining me for another show on the Enlighten Up podcast. I love you guys so much for all of your continued support. So remember to raise your vibe, find your tribe, and be open to the infinite possibilities held in the mysteries that surround us all. Thanks again for sharing the show with your family and friends. And if you're new to the show and you need to find out more information about me, please head on over to my website, NicoleFrolick.com, where you can join my newsletter. And please follow me on Instagram, Telegram, and YouTube. Keep your light bright, and I'll see you next week.